Bring out the hammer. Good afternoon and welcome to the November 2nd regular meeting of council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. I need a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda items. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Fraz. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Delegations. We have one delegation. See how fast we move right up there for you?
I would like to say thank you very much for allowing me to make a presentation today. And Your Honor, Mayor Main and Councillors Chandler, Vrask, Greer, O'Brien, Patterson, and Wilson. Good to see you all. Having sat in your position for many years in my own community, I know how you feel and what you think when you hear people like me get up and make presentations, but I would appreciate it if you hear me out, and at the end of the day, we can all come to a good conclusion. My name is Jack Peak, and for those of you who may not know me at all, I was the mayor of the community of Lake Cowichan for many years, as well as chair and member of numerous boards and organizations such as the AVICC, UBCM, FCM, MIA, ICE-T, CVRD, VIRL, and others. I was involved in them all, and that doesn't even cover what I'm doing now. But my role here today is as Vice President of the ENN Railway Division of the Canadian Railway Historical Association, a major organization, national in stature, with divisions all across the country. Our request is as follows: to be given the opportunity to take ownership of the water tower and arrange to relocate it back onto ENN right-of-way, which is now owned by the Island Corridor Foundation. We have preliminarily arranged with a local contractor to dismantle the tower, repair any aged components, build a concrete foundation, and then reassemble the structure in its new location. It is hoped, and is likely the case, we will be able to restore it to operating condition should we someday have a steam locomotive tourist train operating on the rail corridor. It should be noted that at this point, the ENN Railway Association has in its possession railway equipment such as a cafe car from the Canadian National Transcontinental Passenger Train, which operated in the 1950s. We also have an older baggage car, which is refurbished as a artifact display piece of equipment. We have a caboose here in Parksville, which we're hoping to get moved down to Nanaimo soon, a number of speeders and hand cars. Our group has also built, with its volunteers, a rail siding in the Coombs area with the intention of giving tourist rides on the speeders when our tourist opportunities return. Our group has a great deal of experience with construction of railway facilities. We have over 100 years of history amongst our volunteers, and we've dealt with equipment and infrastructure. We also have a member living outside the province who owns a great deal of heritage railway equipment and has expressed interest in bringing it to the island for use in tourist operations. I have in my hands, which I'll leave you a copy, a letter from the Island Corridor Foundation supporting this request, and we have already met with them to discuss location and logistics of the move and restoration. Upon inspection of the location on the west side of the tracks, which is almost directly opposite the tower's current location, we see an opportunity to provide parking and a small park-like setting for tourists and rail enthusiasts to stop, relax, and take photos of the tower. The bottom line is we ask to take control of the future of the water tower located at 600 Alberni Highway, move it to a different location, refurbish it, and provide ongoing maintenance. As you can imagine, this will take some money as well as our ability to access volunteer labor and also some gifted time and equipment from industry. It is our understanding that a figure of approximately $35,000 has been identified to dismantle and dispose of the material if the tower were to be removed and gotten rid of. We believe an amount of $50,000 would be more realistic and therefore would respectfully request that this amount of money be gifted to our society to help defray the costs of retaining and restoring this heritage structure. We will be looking into its status as a heritage structure and may request through the Federal Heritage Organization that it be given heritage status such as some of the stations along the corridor have been given. This water tower is the last fully intact, original style tower on the ENN Railway. We also see this as part of an opportunity to bring tourists to Parksville and area, and therefore would appreciate a positive response to this request. Thank you very much for letting me share this with you at this point in time. If you have questions, I think I can answer almost anything that you could throw at me.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there questions? Councillor Chandler and Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. Through your mayor to Mr. Jack Peak. Thank you for your presentation. That was really good. I think it's, it's pretty understood that it would be expensive to move that unit. I guess my question is where do you currently get most of your funding?
We get most of our funding through work we do for other companies. At the moment, we are organizing and have organized on many occasions the movement of railway equipment from other parts of North America into this area. Right now, we are in the process of moving some rail cars, and we organize the transportation on the railway, and they're coming to North America or to BC for use in other areas on tourist trains. There are 2 locomotives in Saskatchewan that we'll be arranging to come here. We've already moved one that cost us $30,000, and we received compensation to do that from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Nanaimo, and ultimately it's going to Victoria. And that's just one of our ways of raising money. We have membership all over the place, and we access grants where we can.
Follow up?
Follow up, if I may, again, thank you through the mayor to Jack on the delegation. I guess the other question would be, is there a rush to get this done? Because I guess my question would be is what if some money becomes available through a grant that is made available through Canada grant systems or BC grant that we could access?
Yeah, our timeline is your timeline.
Okay.
We're prepared to work with you on whatever it takes. We have, as I said, preliminary lined up. Dave Gadd is the contractor that we've used many times before. He has the expertise in the equipment. He's been talking to some of the suppliers, concrete people and so on to get some donations where we can, but without a firm commitment to actually us being able to do the project, we can't complete any of those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation, Jack, and for taking the time to come and see us here today. I was writing notes when you were talking about dismantling of the current water tower, and you were going to dismantle it and reassemble it somewhere else, and then I guess my final, where's the final resting place? Where are you
The
located?
final resting place is approximately, if you go where it is right now,
Yes.
and move to the other side of the tracks, which is still on ICF property, and then go about 150 feet to the south, right near a switch there.
Right.
There's a good spot, and we looked at it the other day along with 2 representatives from the Island Corridor Foundation, and identified that as the best spot for it because it still gives us the opportunity to put it into actual use should someday a tourist train with a steam engine be operating, which we've been doing some research on that too.
So moving it down closer to the station
A little
itself.
closer to the station,
Right.
but not that much closer. It's still fairly close to where it is now. And I believe you folks have a water right away that you put a water line in there.
Yes, yes.
It's just to this side of that, but on the right of way. And that's a good area to create some new parking area with just some gravel and possibly a little stopping spot for people to take pictures and use it as a place to rest for a few minutes, tourists and locals as well.
I see. Thank you. And as a follow-up, if I may?
Certainly.
And also, Jack, then through your organization, I recognize your name as the ENN gang, or East End gang. You had some affiliation with people that worked on the trains tracks down on the new Coombs connection down there? If
The
I'm not
E-
correct, could you explain what
this-
your responsibility was down there? Or was that you? Sorry.
That's our group.
Okay.
And they have an offshoot group of volunteers and they call themselves the East End Track Gang,
Right.
but they are actually our volunteers that belong to our organization. And so they've been doing that through us.
And what was their task that they did down
They
with
actually
that?
built a siding, a complete railway siding. I forget now the length, it's probably about 200 feet long. And we own rail cars, hand cars, some are motorized and some are hand driven.
Right.
And our plan was to run them on the tracks. We also were hoping to bring our baggage car up here, which has got a lot of artifacts in it to do with the E&N Railway, put it on display. That's still on hold for the moment. But that was going to be a tourist attraction for which we would charge a small fee to go for a ride on the hand cars.
Right. Thank you. That's right. I just was trying to put it together where
Well,
your past
interestingly
history
enough,
here.
If I could just add to that,
Sure.
we put out requests for information about what somebody would charge us to build that siding. And the cost came back in at $1.2 million. We did it for 2,000 volunteers and donated products.
So now it's back to a usable product.
It's first class.
Right, okay.
It would operate on the railway if they ran trains on it.
Exactly. That's what, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Wilson?
I didn't have anything to say as much as great presentation, Jack, but it was hard to hear you because you have to speak into the mic. But now that I am on screen, I did a workshop with an historical society, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name, but they were talking about funding for the very such project as you're talking about right now. And if I look through my mail, I'll find the name and I'll send it off to you. I'm sure you probably already have it, but I know that we talked about this very type of project.
And the fact of the matter is that the Canadian Heritage Group, federal government heritage people who gave the designation to a number of the stations, we're going to apply to them if we get approval for what we want to do for heritage status for the water tower. That would also access grant funds through the Heritage Canada organization.
Thank you. Counselor Fraz?
Thank you, and through the mayor to Jack. So thanks for coming out for your presentation. I know we had a chance to connect last week as well to kind of look over the location where you were hoping to bring this, the water tower to, and appreciate you guys having the willingness to want to take on this tower. We had looked at the cost to restoring it previously, and I think the figure we had was somewhere in the neighborhood of $275,000 to do a restoration. So $35,000 to demolish it was not what our first choice I think wanted to do with it to get rid of it. So appreciate you wanting to restore it. But thinking of that cost, like if we got a figure of 275,000, you guys have a cost together what you might be looking at to move it
We
and
haven't
restore it?
really costed it all out because what we haven't got at the moment is a clear picture. If we're going to do this, we need to know what we're actually going to have to pay for and what's going to be donated. But if I can give you a comparison, I'm on the board of the BC DeForest Discovery Center in Duncan. We decided to completely restore one of our steam locomotives that runs on our narrow gauge track. We did it for less than $150,000. I was the chairman of the fundraising committee. That cost analysis that we put with it, had we had to pay every dollar, came in close to $400,000. And we did it for less than $150,000 with volunteers and donated material and time. So I know how these projects work. I don't have exact figures on this because I need for you folks to say yes, then I'll get into the details. But at the moment, I absolutely believe we can do this for $50,000 or less.
Well, thank you, because I definitely appreciate that. It would be great to see the water tower remain. So I understand there's only like 4 of them or so.
There's actually, this is the only one left on Vancouver Island that's still in its original form and shape and construction. The Port Alberni one was taken apart and has been rebuilt in something different than it was originally. I'm not sure where the other 2 are, but they're still not in their original configuration like this one is. So it has heritage status written all over it, which attracts money.
And then last thing I'll just mention for council's consideration too is I did speak with the Island Corridor Foundation as well. and can confirm that they mentioned that they're happy to have that land go to supporting the vision of it being a park or parking in there. So they're very cooperative with it. So I think that's worth knowing as well. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions? Councillor Patterson, I had your name down here.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Jack, for your presentation. My grandfather was a very active member in Alberta and Airdrie of the Rail Society and everything in that community. So it's near and dear to my heart. But this question is through the mayor to our CAO. If I could have some recollection in regards to the motion or the discussion that we had in regards to the demolition and the time frame of that, or is that in our budget deliberations, please?
If I may, Your Worship, I'll have to see how this works with the mask on. So council has approved $35,000 to demo, and it was on the books for this year. But when we move forward to do that, the gentleman came to staff, I believe in May, and indicated that they would be able to do something with it for that same amount. So we put it on hold, and basically on the $35,000 is in the budget, and we're looking to move it forward to next year if council approves working with the group to relocate instead of demolish.
Follow up, Your Worship?
Certainly.
So once we finish going around the table with any questions, could we put it to notice of motion for?
Is it not on the agenda, later on in the agenda as we speak?
It's in the seat. It's to receive. I guess I can leave it till
Yeah,
that point.
that's what I was going to say is
Okay,
we'll
thank
have
you.
that conversation then.
So maybe you might want to stick around for a little bit.
Okay. I do have copies of my presentation as well as a copy of the letter from the Island Quarter Foundation that I brought as extras and my business card so that whoever wants it can have it. And I'd like to leave that with you if I may.
Thank you. I have a question then, Councillor O'Brien. I'm curious as to why you're moving the water tower. Why don't we just leave it where it is and save you some money?
Well, I guess you'll have to think about it this way, in that we are firmly in the position of believing that at some point in time in the future, this railway will be up and running, and your area is a prime candidate for tourist railways, tourist trains. We have a variety of equipment we'd like to run. We have access to steam locomotives that we could bring in if this were to come back to life again. And if it doesn't come back to life, we'll be mighty surprised. So our view, much as I've done in everything in my life, I look at things in a long-term vision. We want to look at this as an opportunity now to preserve the structure, but also to have it preserved in such a way that it can actually work and be used. So that's the end.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. And that kind of leads me into the question here, Jack. Have you or your people done an inspection of the current water tower as it is?
Yes, we have.
Okay, and you feel that it's in possibility to be restored into working condition?
Yes.
Is it? Okay, because
Yeah.
I talked to the people that actually reconstructed it type of thing, and it's almost like it was almost like a shell of what it used to be.
To some
What it kind of
degree.
looked like, but I'm not sure. Is there a tank inside there? Is there a
No,
line or
it's
anything?
It's a wooden structure.
Yeah,
And at this point in time, the tank itself has the most of the deterioration, and most of that's in the bottom layer. We've already identified all the material that would be required. We've identified a supplier who's willing to cut and measure and provide exactly what we need. The staves on the tower
Right.
itself are all custom cut, and we have a man who will do that. And everything about it is actually quite straightforward from our perspective. The beams in the bottom, I was chair of the Cowichan Valley Regional District when we restored the Kinsel Trestle,
Right.
so I know exactly what went on there. I know
Good.
how that was done. We will approach this project in exactly the same way. Most of the beams underneath are quite usable.
right.
And there may be parts of some of them, or one or two, that need to be replaced now, which we would. And then eventually we replace others as time went on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Any other, Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Jack, for the presentation. You're looking at $50,000 to replace this or to move this tank and put it in good working order. You're also talking about a tourist train up and down the track.
Mhm.
What type of expenses are you looking at to repair the track?
That expense is involved with the Island Quarter Foundation accessing funds for that. That's not part of our system, not part of our responsibilities. So we're only lobbying on behalf of the ICF to get what's needed from various sources. That particular area is in not bad shape. There's other areas that are in worse shape. Most of it needs to be cut down all the weeds and the boulders that are growing and replace some ballast and some ties. So the biggest possibility right now would be to begin a train from Parksville and go over to Coombs. So that would be the beginning portion. But after that, it just depends on how much more railway gets refurbished.
So they have the financing to do that. So you're just asking for the 50,000.
All we're interested in is the cost and the ability to take on the project and to move it. And the ownership ultimately, I believe, is currently in the hands of the city of Parksville. So the ownership would need to be transferred either to the Island Quarter Foundation or to our organization. And that's something that would have to be figured out through a legal process. But at the end of the day, we want to bear all the responsibility of moving that and restoring it.
Just one more question.
Certainly.
Thank you. So you have no money to put into this yourself as of this point. You're looking
The
for
organization,
Yes.
we have $20,000 sitting in the bank.
So what are you looking at exactly that what you need from us?
Well, I'd ask for 50 because I've been through projects before and I know how that whatever estimate comes up on your table, on my table, as the years I spent in your position, it's never enough. And so I took the liberty of asking for 50, but we can work with 35 if that's what you're willing to give us.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions? The only thing that comes to mind is Petticoat Junction when I was a kid. That was the same type of tower that they used as a swimming pool.
That's right.
And I thought, what an opportunity. We have a swimming pool and anyways, thank you very much, Jack, for your presentation. It was very, very informative. And we, as we said, will be into this in a very short period of time. So if you want to stay, please feel free.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Reports. Our first item of business is the 2021 council appointments. I need a mover and a seconder for recommendations 1 and 2. Moved by Councillor Chandler, seconded by Councillor Fraz. Discussion. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I note the council appointments anyways has been changed considerably, and my thoughts are at this point are as follows. I'm somewhat disappointed, well, I guess, with the process. These recommended appointments were decided on without dialogue and consultation with members of council. In many cases, councillors have just completed 2 years, which allowed them to make the necessary relationships, understand the scope of the committee's function, and to become effective liaisons. In my case, according to the list I have been removed from in this particular list, the Beach Fest position, which is in the middle of the Performing Arts Outdoor Stage Project, which many will know to be constructed and completed by summer 2021. And I've worked tirelessly to champion this project, to bring it to council, to explain and work back and forth as liaison between the organization. And now it's going to be completed, in summer 2021, and I am not going to be able to see it through to fulfillment. And that's it's disappointing to me because it's the city of Parksville that would be taking over this particular operation for its operation and maintenance. And so I wanted to make sure that that was a smooth transition, and that Parksville ended up with the very best performing arts theater out there. So I'm disappointed to be removed before I was able to see that through to fruition. That's my comment. I have to say, even more disappointing is, without any consultation with myself, is my removal from the Arrowsmith Water Service and Englishman River Water Service Board. This is a complex position, that has taken 2 years to completely comprehend the magnitude of the functions and operations of this essential infrastructure. Even with my extensive background in waterworks, it's been a huge learning curve of which I have studied tirelessly to understand all the ramifications of every decision made and the future of what holds for these two boards, the ERWS and the AWS. I cannot really comprehend why the mayor has removed me from this position, whereby I am currently the elected chairman of the ERWS board, elected May 2020 for a 1-year term. It may be 2 years. I couldn't find something, but it's a 1 year for sure. And yet I'm being removed from this position, and yet I was elected as the chairman of this board, the Englishman River Water Service Board. So I'm not sure why and how that could happen, and I feel that it was unfair that it was not at least consulted by myself. There are considerable challenges. This is a very important position. Considerable challenges and decisions that need to be addressed in the next 2 years to continue the viability and supply of a safe, adequate, potable water system to our area. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking ill of any other counselor at this table, but I'm saying I do have the background, I have the experience that can actually take this very serious situation and hopefully for the betterment of Parksville and for the RWS. So I have to say my disappointment that I won't be there to see that through. And I don't understand how I can be removed if I'm the chairman. But so that's my questions, I guess, at this particular point and my comments. So I would actually ask for council to actually reconsider this particular position and make the amended motion to have me remain on that. The Beach Fest one is as it is. But the thing is that the ERWS is a very important management board that I feel that I've just begun to make the difference that needs to be done on that board. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. This was done with a great deal of consideration when I went through all of these positions and I considered it. Your efforts, and as with everybody else on this council, everybody did a great job on the different positions that they've been assigned, that they were assigned. The primary reason why I chose to move people around is we are now 2 years from the end of this term. And when we come up for re-election, who knows where everything is going to fall out. But we need people, more people than what are there now, trained and with knowledge of what's going on. So I felt that the next 2 years, we can have this go through. As far as the EWRS and the Aerosmith Water Services, I mean, we only have, 2 or 3 meetings a year. So it's not like this is this massive big job that everybody has to worry about. But it is 2 meetings that we have. So I would think that any one of the counselors with their abilities here could adapt to it. Yes, it will take time, and that was the whole purpose of it, was to give people time to understand for the next go around. We've got 2 years here, and then we move into the next term after that, and whoever's at the table will have, hopefully some of the people will have experiences to be able to go at that time. That was my thinking for this. It has always been at the discretion of the mayor to make these appointments, and that's what I did. I stick with the appointments that we have, that I have put forward. I think that everybody did a great job. There was no consideration that, oh, I got to get rid of somebody off of there because they did an awful job. That's not the case at all. The case was, I need to make sure that everybody is moving forward for the future. And that's what I would like. We've had 2 years, we're halfway there. It's time to make a change to go into the next half. That is really the only reason that any of these changes were made. So from that perspective, council has the discretion to approve the committee appointments. The liaison appointments are, in fact, at my discretion, and I'm the one that makes those decisions for that. If you are not satisfied with that, you can ask for a vote from the council to turn down my recommendations. That's totally up to whomever wants to make that amendment for the motions. So from there, that's why. I'm sorry if somebody feels perhaps that they weren't consulted. I consulted people when we first made the appointments. I've got to know everybody on this council. I think I know everybody's abilities. And I put everybody that I thought would do a good job on the next go around. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you. Councillor Greer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that we'd accept these appointments.
Councillor O'Brien? Pardon me?
If I may, we have a mover and seconder to approve the appointments already.
Yeah, so we're okay. We're just in conversation now. Thank you. So any other discussion? Any first-time speakers? Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship, and that's what I was wondering with Councillor Greer. I thought the motion was already on the table. So as per further discussion, I find it interesting that you feel that it's important to move people around so that we can get a more rounded experience, and I certainly can find no fault with that. For what I would have to say, then why is the RDN position not actually being rotated around as well with the same philosophy in mind?
That's a very valid question. And the explanation to that is that by tradition, the council, since the beginning of time, well, since 1967, it has always been the mayor and the person who receives the most votes as a councillor have been appointed to the region as the representatives. And that's exactly why it stays the way that is.
If I may, as a follow-up.
Yes?
I remember the meeting that actually we had in your constituency, your campaign office, when we did talk about these appointments, and we did actually have some discussion with the other committees. And at that time, you had indicated that the RDN would be coming up for revision again in another 2 or 3 years. You said it in front of us, and you said that. So obviously you weren't following the historical preamble that you just mentioned.
Perhaps. I don't remember that conversation. If I said that, that was done before I was the mayor and before I was aware of all the rules. So if that's the case and I misspoke, then I misspoke on that. But that was before I was even sworn in as mayor. So from that, that's all I can say about it. Do we have any other discussion? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have one question.
I'm sorry, can we get you to turn it up or get closer to the mic or something?
Can you hear me now? I'm
Yeah,
pretty
perfect.
loud. I'm on full mic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. My question is the way the numbers were allotted to people. I'm just curious as to how some have 4, some have 2, and what was the reasoning behind that?
It was the way that when I was going through them and assigning the different positions, I don't have an explanation as to why somebody would have 4 and somebody would have 2, unless I felt at the time that it was, one was a more intense discussion or took more time than another one, perhaps. For example, yours with the ADP, I felt that probably took up more time than one of the other liaisons. So that's the only reason for it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I was doing that before and I love that position as well and very happy with all of them, but I've been easily carrying 3, so it seemed odd to just have 2 now. So that was my observation, and if anybody wants to throw one my way again, I'm very happy to take on another.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to, anybody else has anything else to say? Then I'll call for a vote on this? All those in favor of the two recommendations? Opposed? Counselor O'Brien and Counselor Wilson. Thank you. It carries. Mr. Russell, could you please give us the background on the next issue?
If I may, Your Worship and Council, for consideration this evening is a development permit and development variance permit at 243 Corfield Street South. The purpose of the development permit and the development variance permit is to facilitate a two-story townhouse building with carport, parking lot, and landscaping. The required notification has occurred for council to consider the development variance permit. As of 3 p.m. this afternoon, no correspondence have been received. Therefore, at this meeting, council must provide an opportunity for those who believe their property is impacted to speak to council or make a submission. Upon that, council may consider issuance of the development variance permit and development permit.
At this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak pertaining to this application. If so, they come forward, state their name and civic address for the record. Calling that for the second time and for the third time. Thank you. I see no one. So I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Robertson. Could you please give us the background on the next issue?
Electronics has never been my specialty, more the rest of the public works. So this first report is following on about the railway water tower. As you've heard the background from Mr. Peak, we thank him for his presentation this afternoon. As background, the city hired engineering firm to assess the condition of the tower and the cost to refurbish or demolish it. And as a result of that, council approved the budget of $35,000 in the 2020 budget process to proceed with demolition. And as I researched the project in my short time here, I was pleased to hear of the East End Track Gang and their interest in preserving, as I have a background in railway work as well, and down the line, pardon the pun. So as outlined in the report, they'll be able to complete the removal, they believe, by June 2021, if approved. And so staff's recommendation is to donate the water tower, again, going through whatever legal process we need to do that. And the budgeted amount of $35,000 for the removal and restoration.
I'm sorry, did you have something? And yes, the first one, but we can add on to these recommendations if we want, and that's what I think we're doing right now, is talking about adding a second point to this, which would be to donate the water tower and $35,000 in as well to the organization. So I need somebody to make that motion for that part, or make that part of the emotion. And then, yeah, okay. So Councillor Greer and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussion on either one of these points? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just so that everyone is clear, the option is to delay the demolition of the tower and accept the EETG relocation proposal, which includes the city's donation of the tower and the budgeted demolition funds in the amount of $35,000. So,
Correct.
thank you.
There we go. Sounds good to me. We've got that moved and seconded. Further discussion? Councilor Frass?
Just wanted to say that I support this motion of having them take it over because I think it is, like I mentioned before, a great opportunity to save the tower since we've already budgeted this amount. What I think this will also do is give them the opportunity then to look into the costs that they will really incur. It seemed like without them having the ownership and that, they don't quite know what that could entail in the end. But if we give them that timeline to work into it, we lose nothing more than we've already committed to this, but we'll be able to save the tower and as well that the vision they have of the tourism and that kind of development for that area, I think is worth us going forward with them too. This is the kind of people that make a great relationship to lead our community. So having that vision is something I definitely value, and maybe once they've figured out the costs, maybe they'll come back to us and let us know what else is entailed in that restoration of that water tower.
Thank you. Councilor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too, I'm very interested in supporting this endeavor. I think it's what I think was the deciding factor for me was when Jack had mentioned anyways that the tourist train would be operating on just a segment of the ICF Corridor Foundation tracks. And so that instead of trying to get the whole Vancouver Island solution figured out, that they're willing to maybe have this work in just a regionalized or local area, which is most exciting to me. And as mentioned, in between Parksville and Coombs and so forth, I can see definite advantages to it for both areas, for the entire area. So with that in mind, I think that this is an endeavor worth supporting, and I'm happy that they've come along and taken up this task. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I will be definitely 100% supporting this, both recommendations 1 and 2. I think it's a great cause. I would much rather save it than to dismantle it. So having said all of that, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jack. You could. I'm sure we'll give it to you, but you can ask.
Based on the decision made by this council at this point in time, may I ask for communication from you folks with us ASAP so we can sit down and iron out the finer details?
We can do it tomorrow.
I need to get some other guys involved, so if we can just arrange it at a convenient time sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we normally will have this whole thing, the whole council meeting will be put out to the public tomorrow, and that this will be part of it. But if you want to do a special communication, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, we want to do a communication, but we also need to sit down with your legal department to iron out the details.
Oh, yeah, well, you can do that with our CAO. She'd be glad to help you on that. Okay.
If I may, Your Worship, just to clarify for Mr. Peak, we will send you an official copy of the resolution tomorrow, and then we would make the arrangements with our solicitor on the paperwork to get it transferred over.
We will probably issue a press release. I have one of our members is very good at that, and we'll send it out after we get that. So that will also, just for your story, for creating.
I'm sorry, you just took over my meeting. It's okay. Absolutely. Thank you. We're very excited to be able to be part of this.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's support, and we're looking forward to getting going on this right away.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson, you've made one individual happy, so now let's move on to the next one.
Let's go for 2.
Yeah.
Right. The second report is about solar-powered LED flashing crosswalk beacons at select locations on Highway 19A. Staff were asked in response to Resolution 19-263 to undertake business case regarding the cost and feasibility of installing solar-powered LED flashing crosswalk beacons at select locations on Highway 19A. And we were to look at the cost savings for the reduced electrical usage, weighed against installation and maintenance cost for consideration. The technologies are very similar and very cost comparative in the hardware itself and for the signal system itself. What is more expensive is, from a maintenance perspective, the solar systems are somewhat more expensive due to the need to replace batteries and a little more maintenance on them, but it's not excessively so. They're on the hardwired systems, there's more trenching and cost for power connections. Overall, both systems, as far as the overall installation of having to put in concrete bases for poles, the poles and arms themselves, the overhead lighting that's required, signage, crosswalk paint, and such is the biggest cost of course, of putting in these type of crossings, as it's quite a wide crossing anywhere in 19A, either 4 or 5 lanes. As I looked into this and talking to experts in the field, the costs are very similar, operating costs ongoing, because they both use the same LED beacons, which require very little electricity, and they only flash intermittently when people push the button, of course. The savings came out to $132 per year per crossing. And most of that is BC Hydro's monthly service fee. It's not actually, the electricity was only as low as 10 kilowatt hours for a typical crosswalk of this type. So to get into more detailed costs, of course, you'd have to pick a crossing and hire a transportation engineer to do the design of it. But just on the surface of a typical crossing, those are the type of savings you see with solar and some of the challenges to either systems. So the recommendation is to receive the report for information.
Sorry, I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Greer, Councillor O'Brien is seconding. Discussion, Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Robertson. We have, I think, LED lights crosswalk on McMillan Street and Morrison, and half of the time they're not working. So I was wondering, are they reliable? I mean, it's if you're going to install something, it should be reliable 24/7. And the one I know on Morrison Street has been down most of the time. So I don't know whether that's due with the connection or what it is, but it's not a very good operation at that point.
Yeah, generally they're both very reliable. I'm going to write that one, written that one down to take a closer look at, because they both use similar technology other than the battery packs themselves for power. So there may be something in the battery system for that, but there are a lot of these installed around the province, and they're generally seen to be a good option. Yeah.
Just to follow?
Okay, go ahead.
At times, it seems to be like one is blinking, the other one's dead. So it seems to me that it must be a power problem.
Yeah, that sounds like that's either a power problem or something in the controller itself, but that's something, that specific one we'll take a look at. But yeah, generally my experience with them is that they're a reliable system.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Ms. Robertson. Thank you for your presentation. you're new to the scene as such anyways, Ed, regarding where this is, I guess, probably my motion back probably a year and a half or two. I guess the spirit and the intent of the initial resolution was to provide crosswalks all along 19A. The idea was to provide like safe pedestrian crossings in multiple locations and with the additional benefit of slowing traffic along 19A, Highway 19A. And that is, therein lies the problem. So the thing is that it's been requested by residents and businesses and it's very unsafe. We see the people jaywalking from across from Thrifties and so forth, and it's terrible. So the thing is that you did a study on cost difference in between solar and hardwired, which I appreciate. It's kind of morphed into a very costly situation. The reason I brought it up is because I've seen other locations that have these solar powered ones, just like the one, similar to the one that's on Despard, and the CAO may help me out here. And is it Hestley? Yeah. Right across from Springwood School.
Hackman Ferry, yeah.
That's
I drove by and took a look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I walked by it this morning.
Yeah.
So the thing is that it's a solar powered one anyways, and it works quite fine. So that was more of my understanding of what these would look like. And the idea is that to keep the cost down low enough so that we can have them in multiple locations. And so they're actually going to serve as a safe egress across the highway, as well as being cost effective so that we can have enough of them. But it's seeing on how it's gone on now at this particular point, and I think you've said that that system probably wouldn't be recommended for it because we go 4 lanes and sometimes 5 lanes across the highway. It would seem that like it's not really suitable for that type of situation. So my point is that I would be willing at this point to have this removed back off of one of our budget considerations. To suggest that this would better be suited for after we have our strategic plan, or is it strategic plan? As Councillor Wilson might be able to help me out, but I know that we're having another meeting in January where we're talking about the downtown and all the rest of it.
That's in February.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. So the thing is in February, we're having a meeting where we're talking about the traffic slowdown. So in order to put through these crosswalks, the solar powered crosswalks along 19A, before we have the rest of the slowdown of the highway, it would be premature to do that. So I think we've waited this long. I'm quite willing to set this back until after we have that conversation. But that was my intent, is like to have cheaper ones, multiple locations all across, because we're going to slow down the traffic away from the highway and have this a destination instead of a drive-through. That was the idea. So thank you very much, Ed, for your presentation. But that gives, I'm quite willing to just say, let's put this on hold for now, and then let's talk about it after that. But thank you.
Marilyn, I'm sorry, Councillor Wilson, did you have your hand up?
Oh, well, that's exactly, thank you, Your Worship. I was going to suggest that we wait until we have the CEO, the Committee of the Whole, in February to discuss this, because we are pretty close, and it is a solution may be found at that time. So I think it's better to wait. I agree with Councillor O'Brien. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I just want to remind everybody that this is just being received for information. It's not any action being taken on it. So absolutely, when we come up to February and we have the conversations about the downtown corridor, then we can have this. I think that's the appropriate time to bring it up. So let's just vote to take this into information at this point, and we'll push it back until then. So I'll call the question if everybody's in favor. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. This one. Mr. Robertson, could you give us the background on the next issue, please? We really got a lot of you today, don't we?
So, well, this is the first and the last. I'm coming in and going out with a bang. So this report is looking at lighting options for Craig Street between Jensen and Hearst. There was a staff report in July about some options for this block in response to resolution 19-258. And staff presented options, costs, and feasibility for improving lighting along this block for consideration during the budget process. Since that, I've been asked to look at other options and have brought a couple of, well, one amended one option and a new option forward that would, I think, achieve the goal of improving public safety in that area in front of the businesses, and also in a relatively inexpensive way get through till when this block is reconstructed, which is estimated by engineering to be around the year 2025. The options that we looked at, the new option we looked at, I'll talk about first, is to provide downlighting on the buildings. There's two, I guess, main buildings on that block, but attached to the building themselves, and that would illuminate the sidewalk. They wouldn't have the same overall lighting as the street lights do, but would improve pedestrian safety in that area, and would potentially utilize the power from the buildings themselves, so reducing the cost of putting in electrical infrastructure at this time along that block when construction isn't taking place. It also avoids having to build bulb outs around the sidewalks to accommodate streetlight poles, as the current sidewalk configuration doesn't have enough space for accessibility. I have experience with previous projects in another city where we used the similar downlighting on buildings downtown with a lot of success, and has visually is very pleasing. But it would bridge you through until the more complete reconstruction happens. So that option will take a bit of work, obviously, to get interest and agreement from the building owners that they would like to pursue that, looking at the size of the electrical service, which likely wouldn't require a lot, as they'd be LED lights, so it wouldn't have a large draw, and then the practicality of which fixtures and where to fix them. But it is the new option that we're presenting, and also suggesting that one of the options that have been put forward previously of an existing pole that's there at the southwest corner of Hearst and Craig, to utilize that by putting a double arm davit in there, which would put a light at 90 degrees to the current one over Hearst, would put one over Craig, and would give some overall lighting to that part of the street. And that's a relatively inexpensive option that we could do as long as our supplier and contractor has that specific arm in place. Could be done relatively quickly. So those are our recommendations, is to go with option one of that davit arm, and option two of exploring the lighting on the buildings in this next time frame.
Thank you. I have been asked that we take each of these recommendations individually, so we'll go through them one at a time, if you don't mind. So recommendation one is to receive for information. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion. Councillor Greer, this is on information, receiving for information.
You're just looking for option one?
Yes,
You just want to discuss-
recommendation one.
Yeah, I have no trouble with option one. However, I've looked at this extensively.
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Greer, sorry to interrupt. It's recommendation one, which just says we're receiving this report for information
Okay.
purposes. Okay, so it's not, we're not proposing anything at this point.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a second.
That's fine.
All right, so for recommendation one, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Recommendation two, pardon me, Councillor Fraz is going to recommend that. I need a seconder for that. Councillor Chandler, discussion. Councillor Fraz, you get first shot at it.
I think regardless of what happens, this is a relatively cheap and immediate potentially immediate option that can improve the situation. So I think it's a good option to go with.
Through the mayor, yeah, I feel the same thing. Definitely a good addition. I think if you look back at how long the Craig Street Business Association had tried to get lighting in that area, I think this is a good situation, get that finally cleaned up, because the PDBA wasn't willing to support it at that time and move forward. But I think at this point, it's nice to see something moving forward. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if I can, through to Mr. Robertson. Part of the initial recommendations of option 5 that appeared earlier this year anyways, was to the fact of, you referred to the bulb outs and so forth, and installing a couple utility or power poles in the area. And the only problem that we identified as the area, to be clear, is Jensen, the block in between Jensen and Hearst Avenue. So it's quite a short block. And so perhaps just, I think Callie's report, I think, included, was it 2 or 3? Was it? Yeah, on both sides of the street, was it? Yeah. I would have to look at Callie's report again, but anyhow, the thing is that it's for a very, very short area. And I understand the Craig Street complete infrastructure replacement program is due to come up as well. With your past experience, your previous employers, would it not be possible to pull the lighting component out of what is going to be the improvements to Craig Street and just apply that to the Hearst to Jensen portion? As for the improved lighting, of course, they're all LED lighting now and so forth, but to the new standard and so forth, without affecting the fact that, keeping in mind, I know we have preliminary drawings, I'm sure, of what Craig Street is going to look like or what has to be replaced there. We haven't been apprised of that yet because it's so far out, I guess. We don't want to confuse us, and which is understandable. But the thing is that would it not be possible to just do, say, a portion of that, which is not going to affect the infrastructure in improvements that are going to happen in 3 to 4 to 5 years? Because I'm just really not willing to kick this can down the road again, because the thing is that the people have been asking for this forever, and there's always an excuse, there's always a reason. And now it's why, because we're going to replace the whole street, well, maybe in 3 or maybe in 5 years. So the thing is that I feel we have to do something now. And so I'm just asking your opinion. Is it something that could possibly be put in now? And then we can go along with the infrastructure upgrading in 3 years or 5 years, whatever is decided by council. But the thing is that could we do that now? Sorry. Right. Yeah.
Through the mayor, it is possible, except that I don't believe engineering has the designs done out that far. My discussion with engineering, it's not, and my experience is engineering never has the drawings done that far out, as much as we always would hope they would, but there's too many other priorities. So the fear would be that you put something in that you're either having to move because there's a change in thought over 5 years and they're not in the right place, or you've locked in a design that you haven't really done, but now you've placed some fairly expensive infrastructure in place. And because the lighting is underground, you'd be running conduit, and it would be, my view would be expensive to service, to do that when you're not excavating the rest of the street to do the overall work that you'd be doing. The economy of scale would be quite different.
Follow up, if I may, Your Worship. So your comments that the downwash lighting, the LED lighting on these existing buildings to be fair, down the Stedman's buildings that would be applied on, and then the other buildings on the other side, the hairdresser, the Soak Essentials and Realm Cafe. The idea would be to contact those building owners type of thing and make sure that they understand the scope of it, that we're trying to get full illumination there that makes it safe for our business owners as well as their customers at nighttime. I'm afraid that if we just say we're going to put downwash in there and the building puts up a 30-watt power saving LED light, and then here we go, and then we haven't solved anything. Will we be able to give them some recommendations of what we feel would be adequate lighting at this time, instead of just leaving it to the discretion. So, say someone that doesn't have the expertise such as your department.
Sure. Through the mayor, the thought I've got as we put this together is that the city would be recommending the fixtures and would in fact purchase and install the fixtures. And it would run off of the power system of the buildings, and then the city would reimburse for those costs, which would be kept low because they're LED and they'd be on a photo cell, which we could calculate the usage so that it wouldn't be an expensive option. We would have say over what the type of fixture is that goes on there.
Fair enough. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, just to clarify, we're thinking of something like a license of occupation where the city would control the type of lighting. We would, as Mr. Robertson said, we would choose, where it goes, and then we would enter into an agreement with the owners that stipulates all of the terms. So how much we're reimbursing, when, maintenance, access to the building, for all of those things. So it would be controlled in terms of how it all looks.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question about this, the Craig Street upgrade. How far is that upgrade going to go? Right all the way up to the end at Maple and Hamilton, or is it just for the downtown portion from, let's say, Stanford, or what is the extent of the upgrade in 5 years, supposedly?
I would suggest that maybe that will be answered in item 3. Is that correct? We're talking about that. So if you can just hold that question, Councillor Wilson, the very next recommendation, there's going to be a friendly amendment that will outline that and address your question. We're on 2. Well, I'm waiting for everybody to finish, so.
Oh, okay. So we'll have sorry, can I just finish there?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit confused as to how we're discussing this, because they kind of all go together if you're going to have any say in anything. But so we'll go back to we can go back to the retrofit option 1, option 2, and option 3 and discuss after. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're on recommendation 2.
Okay.
Okay, which is where the double dipping debit or whatever it is.
Right.
And we're on that one right now, and all we're talking about, should be talking about, is that.
Okay.
We've kind of gotten off on a little bit of a tangent on the side things. That's going to come up in the very next discussion, so bear with us on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Chandler, you had Councillor Patterson, did you have anything to bring up on this? For just the double debit.
Double dabbit.
I know.
And no, I'll leave it as I'm very much looking forward to having this and hopefully in place very, very soon.
Okay, so on the double. Now I've got myself confused. I'll call the question for recommendation 2. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Greer and Councillor O'Brien are in opposition. Are you in opposition? Oh, okay. Recommendation 3, then we're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could, I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to recommendation number 3 in order to allow council consideration of this option being extended to include all of Craig Street from Jensen to the Island Highway.
Seconded by Councillor Fraz. Discussion. Councillor Patterson first.
Thank you, Your Worship. So when I went through the recommendation and then had a brief conversation with our CEO, this is the downlighting portion. So on each of the businesses that are located on Craig Street up to Jensen, It would have the down lighting, which is on, basically on the roof, and then would overhang to the sidewalk below. So I feel that this is a really good step forward that would suit the needs of our community by helping lighting up the sidewalks. It increases the accessibility as well because you're not having the street poles and everything that are jutting out. It's a very minimal cost to the business owners and the buildings that are located on Craig Street. I think it helps a great deal with the viability of our downtown core and having the concerns of our citizens and our business owners and their staff and everything by leaving their businesses. I'm sure that you know, like just this past weekend with the daylight savings and everything, we get dark like so early at 5 o'clock, but also in the morning when, as I said, I come to work at 6:30 in the morning and it's quite dark out. It would be very, very welcoming and security wise and everything to have some excess lighting on Craig Street. So that's the reasoning for my friendly amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Fraz.
Thank you.
Councillor Greer.
To council through the mayor, one thing I like about this amendment too, and extending it down to all the businesses there on Craig Street is it gives us an opportunity to, if we do this well and find that it works well with businesses and improves the lighting, maybe it's something that we might be able to replicate in other parts of the town too. So it's an opportunity to set an example of what can be done. I also think it shows the buy-in from the businesses. Hopefully the PDBA can get on board with it as well. I know this has been a request that they've been having for looking at options, and they do have a responsibility or some control aspect in it too by being able to support it. So hopefully they can get behind us because it is a challenge that we have, and I think this would be a great option for us to be able to explore. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greer, Councillor Chandler, and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I look at this as a Band-Aid situation, and I've looked through the number 3, and I think it's possible if at our budget meetings that maybe we could bring the Craig Street development up forward from, instead of in 2025, bring it up maybe to next year and do it properly. I've always been one to I don't like the Band-Aid situation. If we're going to do something, I like to see it done right. And I think if we wait until we don't have to wait long, if we could exchange that development with something else in the city, then we could do it properly and get it done all at once. Because I think by just adding some of these situations, and eventually we're going to have to redo Craig Street, and then some of these things aren't going to be used. So I think we should take a look at bringing that project forward and doing it proper the first time around. Thanks.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Wilson. I just had a question for Councillor Wilson in regards to what has been discussed in the past with the PDBA on this security issue. I know that that's been sort of in the forefront, and I guess the question I would have, there's been some recent break-ins there with Fireside Books, and we had some issues on Hearst itself where the music studio was broken into as well, not far from there. So the question would be, is I know that they were asking for additional security issues and maybe us trying to fund it as a city, but have they put aside some money to do something with this program to, I guess, protect the downtown core and all of their members, I guess? That would be my question. Thank you.
I think that I would like to defer that question to the PDBA for, and I will get back to you on that if you like, Councillor.
Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, I am aware that they have a grant program for SEPTED that their members can apply for funding. I believe it's about $15,000, 15, each year.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right, we'll wait to hear from you if there's any additional on that. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm unclear about Councillor Patterson's amendment. Was that you were hoping that the lighting, the new option would include double davit lighting all the way down Craig Street, or the building mounted pedestrian lighting? Option 2.
Option 2, so that it would be downlighting.
Yes.
It's not the double davit. That's number 1.
Number 1 was double davit.
Yeah,
But
so no.
but didn't number 1 just already pass as double davit?
This is recommendation number 3.
It's okay. So my clarification is, so are we now deciding whether to do the double davit up in the first block and then do pedestrian mounted pedestrian lighting option 2 as well?
That's correct.
As well as in the area of in between Hearst and Jansen as well? Okay, thank you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure what you were proposing, double davits or wash. Thank you.
So we're all really clear. We're only going to have one double davit here, and it's going to be right on the corner, is it not? And then after that, it'll all be the building lighting from there on. All right. So any other discussion on this? Did I get everybody? I'll call the question for recommendation number 3. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Yeah. All right. Recommendation 4, the council resolution 2162 passed on July the 6th be rescinded. Need a mover? Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Fraz. Discussion? It's just redundant, isn't it? Yeah, all right. And heaven knows we don't need any confliction. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much. We made it. Thank you. Councillor Patterson. Oh, what? I'm sorry, I switched 2 pages instead of 1. My apologies. Third reading for zoning and development amendment bylaw 2020 number 2000.129, text amendment to comprehensive development at 115 McMillan Street South. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Chandler. Discussion? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Note that Councillor Patterson and Councillor Wilson have opposed. And it carries. Thank you. Now, we're on to Councillor Patterson's motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the previous meeting, the Oceanside Initiatives delegation came forward and gave a brief presentation in their 10 minutes. And so therefore, thank you. So the motion that would be is that staff be directed to enter into discussions with Oceanside Initiatives and the Parks and District Chamber of Commerce regarding the city's potential for annual contributions towards ongoing funding for regional economic development initiatives, and report back with options for council consideration during the 2021 budget deliberations. Thank you, Your Worship. I think that we needed to have a further conversation and everything with Oceanside Initiatives and the Chamber of Commerce, and therefore that was what the motion put forward was, and for staff to have that discussion with them and then come back to council. As it stands right now, it's in a bit of a limbo type presentation world, and we do trying to think of the correct wording, but we are one of the partners and have signed a memorandum of understanding with the Oceanside group, Oceanside Initiative. Oh, no? Did we not do a? Just through the chambers in both the Oceanside area. And that, but anyway, it is a discussion, 5-minute phone call, 10-minute Zoom meeting, and that, and just to move forward.
One of my biggest hesitations right now is just in regards to where our staff resources is at. I know it's been on all of our minds as to how much is on their plate, and perhaps we need to relook at what we've given them as priorities and load up on them as we come into near the end of the year here. So for me, a little bit of the timing, I think if we were to evaluate where staff workload is at and see what we can accommodate, then I would probably feel more comfortable as to offering something that's more to put on their plate that really wasn't on our radar until last week. The other thing as well, the Oceanside initiatives, while they were able to help some businesses through this difficult year, looking at the numbers that they put forward as to their operating costs and what the end result was, it just gives me that kind of pause to think about the value of dollars of, like, you know, it seems like a good way to inject them with cash, and then out comes smaller cash injections at the end result there for the businesses. So, you know, how do you put a value onto the return on the dollars there? I don't know if I have an answer for that kind of question right now, but I think maybe the timing for me just isn't there to entertain this right now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to further, I would not be supporting this actual motion from Councillor Patterson for the staff to look into it further, mainly for the fact that I would not be supporting any Oceanside initiative ask as they presented at the delegation. I wouldn't support that in any way, so I wouldn't want to waste staff time at this time.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the CAO, I just wondered if, and this is a two-part question, but I wondered if there was any available grants that you may or may not have heard about in regards to funding for this kind of thing, just with the, you know, obviously the pandemic situation creating all kinds of issues. You know, I don't think really it should be a civic responsibility as far as costing goes. I think that it should be a provincial and or federal situation where something is done at that level, because it's, you know, it's really to bring back communities that have been more or less desecrated with some of their businesses and a lot of businesses closing. So that would be my question to you firstly, and a follow-up to follow if I could.
If I may, Richard, through to Councillor Chandler, I think you kind of answered your own question. I agree. The city, anytime we see a grant that we think would work for them, we certainly share with our local partners. If I was to guess, I would say that I think there will be a lot of grants coming for nonprofit organizations that have that objective. We typically are prohibited from assisting business, so we have to be very cautious, and we can work with nonprofit groups, but I think that I would say there will be grants coming their way. I can't guarantee it, obviously, but yeah, I guess you kind of answered your questions.
I tend to do that,
I like
actually.
that. That's
so.
great. That makes it easy for me.
Yes, great. So again, I mean, through the mayor to CAO Keller, with that in mind, I guess, is that our responsibility as a city to provide those grants and to go for those grants, or is that something that the organization goes for?
So if I may, through your worship to Councillor Chandler, typically we do provide some assistance if it's to provide information like demographics or statistics on building permits or, you know, local profile information. But we would not typically partner with them on those type of applications. That would probably make them ineligible, because we have separate streams where cities and towns and government agencies can apply for certain funding, and then nonprofits apply for other things usually. And of course, we want to make sure we're not double dipping and crossing that line. So we would not usually assist in the application, but just kind of support every now and then with facts or background info.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this motion either. I didn't like the numbers that was given initially in the presentation, but I also believe that this is a federal and provincial situation. The city should not be involved in funding any type of businesses under these circumstances. So I certainly won't support this.
Thank you. I as well will not be supporting the motion for a couple of reasons. First off, when this started, Councillor Greer and I both said at that time, their funding is going to last them for a year, then they will be back to the city, and it'll be an ongoing situation looking to us for funding on this. We weren't even asked. We weren't advised. We weren't told about this Oceanside initiatives when it was started up. They had everybody from the Tourist Association right on through. The only people that weren't asked was the city of Parksville, which I found very interesting. So when I look at that, and then I go back 10 years ago when we were here, there had been an ongoing situation for 10 years prior to that, where we had an economic development department that brought absolutely no businesses to it. And it was through the same organization and through the same ideas. It hasn't worked then. I don't see that we can make it work now. We aren't in a position to make economic development happen at this point in time. We don't have, if you talk to everybody in town, there's no employees for anybody. So how can you go out and find businesses to start up in this community? I just think that this is putting the cart before the horse. And yeah, it was great. They were able to help a few businesses by lending them money. $5,000, I think, is what they were doing. I understand that. It was a great thought that they did it. But, I don't think our money is best spent this way. I think our money is better spent in other areas for our community. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to support this as well. So if everybody's had their turn, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we'll go Councillor Greer, Councillor Chandler, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Fraz, myself, Councillor Wilson. I'm sorry, you had your hand up as well. Okay, and Councillor Wilson were marked as opposed. Thank you very much. Now, does any member have any notices of motion that they wish to bring forward? Councillor Fraz.
I have a long notice of motion here. As far as the time frame goes, it's more just to get it off my to-do list here, but this is going to be for our budget times. The notice of motion is that staff be directed to add $15,000 to the 2021 operating budget for traffic signals to facilitate the upgrade of 3 intersections at McMillan and 19A, Franklin Gall and 19A, and Resort Way at 19A, to include the addition of audible signals for the visually impaired.
Okay, that's a notice of a motion for the next meeting.
It's a notice of motion, not for our next meeting, but for our budget.
For budgets. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Anybody else? Councillor Chandler, you have a notice of motion?
I do. Thank you, Your Mayor, Worship. I'd like to just put a notice of motion together to look at a budget line item for additional security in the downtown core and different parts of the city. With the rising crime that's going on there, I'd like to at least look at different options in the city budget to potentially put money in towards that.
So that's another notice for the budget.
The budget itself, yeah.
That's fine. All right. I don't want to get into adding all of the budget items here. We can do that when we get to the budgets, which is next week. It's our first meeting.
If I may, Your Worship, amended budget is this Wednesday, and then it'll be the end of the year for 2021.
All right. So if there's no other, we'll keep going forward. Any new business? New business, okay, Counselor Patterson beat you, so she's first, and then Counselor Fraz. Counselor Wilson, did I see your hand up?
You did,
Okay, thank you.
but it was not about new business.
Oh, we're doing new business right now.
I know,
Thanks.
I had my hand up for a notice of motion, but I'm not even sure I can make this notice of motion, but I just thought I would ask.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed you then, I
You did.
apologize, go ahead.
I was going to yellow, but so I wonder if I agree with what we were talking about Craig Street. And it was something I was trying to get out earlier, and Councillor Greer mentioned it, is bringing, can we put a notice of motion forward that we bring the Craig Street forward into next year? Or is that possible to make a notice of motion?
Talk about it in budget time, can we not? There's no reason not to.
If I
That was
may,
a
Your Worship,
statement.
yeah, we probably should talk about it budget time, but it would require some analysis from staff on what would be switched out of the capital.
Okay,
frame.
so you now have a hint that that's coming forward. All right,
Thank you,
we will talk about it at budget time,
thank you.
because I think it's not a bad idea, but any other new business? Counselor Patterson, Counselor Fraz.
Thank you, Your Worship. Since some of my liaison positions will be changing, I wanted just to touch base in regards with the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association. As you know, most of our events are canceled. So Business Expo and some of the other markets and that have been canceled for the rest of 2020. But the province has extended its deadline for the MRDT and plans and budgets a little bit longer due to 2020 and where things stand. So those are extended and there'll be meetings in December, which Councillor Wilson, I think, is taking on that liaison position. So I will brief her on a couple of new acronyms to add to her vocabulary. And in regards with the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce, and Councillor O'Brien, I believe, is taking on that position, and they have a signing.
If during this, you mentioned that the Chamber of Commerce, the meeting times are 7 a.m.
Yes, Councillor
I'm
O'Brien.
unavailable due to other personal commitments for Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. So I'm not sure that that's a good. I know what you're going to try and give me some information, but I can't attend the meeting, so it's redundant. And I would have had that discussion if the mayor had said that this is what he was giving me.
Well, I'll just continue with the new business is that the chamber has a signing ceremony, which I think is really forthcoming with the Nanaimo and Qualicum First Nations set for in the future. So, and as far as liaison positions go, I'll just make a point of saying, as I've said to Councillor Wilson, that I'm more than happy to update. I'm also more than willing to be an alternate for anyone that has issues attending some of their liaison positions. I know that I right now cannot attend the Parksville and District, or not the Parksville, the Parksville Qualicum Beach Tourism Association meetings because they're at 12 o'clock at noon and I'm rather busy at 12 o'clock at noon on a Wednesday. So I'm sure that we all lead very, very, very busy lives and can come to some agreement amongst us around the table, amicable, and help to fill in those different liaison positions or to speak to the mayor and have some of them changed out if need be.
Counselor Fraz?
I just wanted to just update council. I'm sure most of you are aware, but things like the arena, the Oceanside Place Arena and Ravensong Pool, they are operating. Everything's being booked online. And as well, there's things like the Oceanside Building Learning Together program that is also booked through the RDN scheduling website. They do some wonderful programs, and currently they're even putting out senior care packages. They got some funding through Rotary, and they do wonderful things like the Saturday morning breakfast club, which I took my daughter to a couple of weekends ago, and I'm just amazed at the type of programs that we have in our community here. And I wish everyone would knew that they exist out there because they are fantastic. So again, just the RDN website for all the bookings. If there's anything the community wanted to go ice skiing or swimming. Question there?
Actually, sorry, if I may interject, Your Worship, and that Councillor Fraz brought up something that I loved with my kids is the WOW bus, and it's in the process of being remodeled and redone, and that with help from the service clubs and that Rotary and that as well, they hold a Saturday bottle drive, and that with funds going towards the WOW bus and that too. So thanks for the memory.
Yeah, thanks for touching on that. You're right, Saturday bottle drive at the Speedy Auto Glass. And I was just speaking with them at Oceanside BLT this afternoon. They have the WOW bus back on the road Tuesdays and Thursdays going out to Arrington and Meadowwood. And I think as they, as they get it operating a little bit more, I think they'll be adding in the Saturdays again as they get the volunteers for the bus driver and that too. So yeah, fantastic program. They're online on Facebook. They have a new website that'll be coming out soon as well, I think within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to our RDN reps. I can tell you that the Panther Hockey Organization is very upset with what's happening at the arena, the way they're scheduling it, the amount of time we have, and all the rigmarole that we have to go through to register. There's a lot of players that haven't been playing because they're only accepting so many players at such and such a time. Our games are like 45 minutes, which is hardly worth the effort. There's no showers. So we got a lot of very disgruntled hockey players. So I thought I'd pass that on.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those concerns, because it is something that I've heard as well, and I've brought it up with the operations there. A response that I was given, because the same thing at the pool, like the pool, they have some difficulties with, they only allow 10 people in at a time to go swimming, and there's a whole process for them to go in there. But this is it's the start of their opening up on certain times, so that is going to be revamped. And I think the next stage, if you'll call it that, coming up here in mid-November, you'll see some changes that are going to be directed from feedback they get from the public. I think for the swimming, the next kind of round of sign up for your swimming is going to be mid-November, I think, just after Remembrance Day there. I'd expect probably the same thing for the arena to be going through some changes. So if you give them feedback at the arena there too, they are receiving that and going to be adjusting. So.
I got it. Before we proceed to special business, I'd like to remind the public that our special budget meeting will be held on Wednesday, the November 4th at 3 p.m. And our next regular council meeting will be held Monday, November 16th at 3 p.m. Now I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that we move in camera pursuant to section 91E and K of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to land and the proposed provisions of municipal service. Moved by Councilor Greer, seconded by Councilor Chandler. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Want to take 5 minutes?